All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. If you are not watching but listening, you are missing the fact that Rachael Bade does not appear to be in her living room. She is in America's living room. Rachael, where are you right now?
I am standing right outside the White House near the sticks where officials come in and talk to reporters when they have something to say. I've got the crane moving behind me. They're clearly working on the ballroom this morning. I can smell a fire, and I know Susie Wiles is a fan of having her fire lit, so I wonder if that's her. And I just saw Russ Vogt walk into the executive building here, right beside me. So I'm here because I'm pool duty, new media pool duty today. So I got up super early, ran here, got my tripod. And Dan, I'm super glad you're going to take the lead today because I think I would be a bit of a mess trying to juggle it from here.
Can I quickly jump in and tell you? So if you look over Rachel's left shoulder, kind of backwards, is where the press secretary's office looks out on. She mentioned Susie Wiles loving a fire. The press secretary's office also has a fireplace. When I took over, I was told, when you want to have a fire, let us know, call a number, and we'll come light it for you. And as a former, not very high-ranking Boy Scout, before I was asked to leave the troop, I said, well, I can light my own fire.
That's right.
And let's just say it did not go well.
Did you forget to open the flue, Sean? Did you not open the flue?
It's not a question of whether I opened the flue because of the age of the flue. There's apparently a very systematic process that the Park Service does. Needless to say, there are doors behind Rachael that generally for security purposes stay very shut. But because of my error, Secret Service had to air out the West Wing. So
I'll just say, I as someone who loves a good fire, like real wood, not gas, you can smell it burning. It is the best. Well, Rachael, have a great day. We're all proud of you, and we can't wait to hear what nuggets you unearth and what questions, if given the opportunity, you might ask. So we have a great show today because we'll get to, it's going to be a very exciting day at the White House. But our five today, we're going to first talk about the tit for tat energy strikes overnight and kind of Donald Trump, posting on Truth Social, stories kind of across the press, across the world about what the impact may be. Then we're going to talk about the war coming to Congress. So far they've been generally supportive. The Republicans have. Sounds like a pretty big funding bill may be coming. And then if troops are on the ground, that will trigger a conversation that Sean has talked about, doesn't happen until potentially boots are on the ground. We'll then talk about Tulsi Gabbard, her testimony yesterday. She's back up there today. J.D. Vance and, of course, Kent talking to Tucker Carlson yesterday evening. We'll talk about Senator Mullin's kind of vision of DHS yesterday. A lot of interesting things. He and Rand Paul also went back and forth. And then lastly, we'll talk about Governor Hochul. She had an interesting set of things to say about raising taxes in New York vis-a-vis all of our friends in Florida now. And of course, circling her is Mandani, who wants her to raise taxes. So before we do that, though, we're going to have a word from our first sponsor, Rachael, from the White House. Hit it.
From the White House. Yes, of course. I want to tell you guys about All Family Pharmacy. I mean, we've all been there. Just went through sick season. You have a cold, you're coughing, sneezing, sore throat for more than just 48 hours. It ends up dragging out. You need some antibiotics, but you call your doctor. They can't get you in for several more days. You get in, then you got to go to the pharmacy to pick it up, and the pharmacy doesn't have it. You have to wait in line around all these people, potentially exposing them. And all you want to do is be home sick and relaxing as you sort of get better. Well,
or be at the White House. Maybe you just want to be at the White House. Yeah, exactly.
There you go. With All Family Pharmacy, you can scratch all of that. All you have to do is go online, type in your symptoms, look at the medicine you think you might need. It goes to a licensed physician who, again, reviews your symptoms and then can, prescribe you what you need. And it sends right to your door, directly to your door. Forget, all the hassle of going to the doctor, going to the pharmacy. Super easy and super convenient. So if you want to take a look at that, go online, go to allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle. You can get 10% off your first prescription. Use the code HUDDLE10 Again, allfamilypharmacy.com. Use the code Huddle10, guys. Check it out.
Rachel, that's outstanding that you did that without a monitor. That was very, very natural. And I just think it sells itself. If you have to go to work like Rachel.
There's a real need.
You don't have a time to go to the pharmacy.
No.
All right. Well, speaking of a busy schedule today, let's talk about the daybook. So earlier here, and that they may still be going, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane briefing on the war. Sean, we were talking briefly before that we came on, just Hegseth again starts with just attacking the media, saying that they're not covering this correctly. They're not talking about the fact that we are winning so much. Sean, I want to ask you, I turned on Fox and Friends 6 a.m. this morning. Their lead was these overnight attacks, the back and forth, the fact that Iran somehow keeps their capabilities. Do you think there's a little bit of a risk of Hegseth being so defiant when images, not just on MS Now, but conservative networks are about the ongoing battle here?
I mean, I think part of this is we become so tribal that, the people that if you're not with this administration or, of TDS or whatever, you're not going to really like anything he says anyway. So I think he's trying to give some fuel to the base to say, hey, stay fired up. Remember who's screwing with us, and the left doesn't want us to win. And so part of it is making sure that the part of the country that's with us stays engaged and stays excited. Because I mean, that's at least my take on this.
Yeah. All right. Well, then at 8:30 right now, Tulsi Gabbard, CIA Director Ratcliffe, and FBI Director Patel are over on the House side today talking about worldwide threats. We'll get to their Senate testimony here in a minute. 9:30, Secretary Mullins. It sounds like Homeland is going to vote today.
Yeah.
Rand Paul says he's a no.
Right.
We got it on the agenda. We'll get to it.
All right. And then 10:45, Hakeem Jeffries will speak. 11:15. This is where Rachel's day may get really interesting. Donald Trump is meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister in the Oval Office. Obviously, we all want to know, is the press brought in? Right. And what kind of a move? I mean, this conversation is going to be wild. Rachel, how's your Japanese? Can you speak it at all or no?
Definitely not. Although I have visited Japan, beautiful country, absolutely. I mean, look, I hope they bring us in, and not only for my own selfish reasons, but I just think it's super interesting that a lot of these allies of the U.S. they continue to say they're not going to help. Yeah. But look, with Japan, they get a lot of their oil and energy from the Middle East. And whether they like this or not, this is happening. So at some point, these guys are going to have to ask themselves, look, we didn't start this. We didn't want it to happen. But we need to make sure we stabilize oil prices. And what are they going to do about it? So I don't know.
Just make sure you smile, right? Don't forget to smile, Rachel. All right.
Yeah.
3 o'clock.
By the way, do we get a vote? I have a mixed bag on this. I don't know whether it's going to happen. I feel like she's got 3 strikes against her right now. She's not. I don't know. I just don't feel good.
Me?
No, the Prime Minister.
Oh, okay.
He's walking into
what are the other strikes? Remind me?
I mean, they were supposed to do this as a scene setter for the meeting with China.
Yep,
that's not that got pushed. So she was supposed to do this whole cherry blossom stuff. As you guys know, it got really cold in DC. Yep. So I mean, the whole idea of the meeting was it was supposed to be this perfect timing, and there are 3 strikes on the timing that don't work. So I don't know. I don't feel like you got a lot of positive coming out of this.
Yeah,
perfect timing for Rachael Bade. Great day
there you go.
At the White House.
Let me in there.
3 o'clock, Trump has a policy meeting. Curious to see how that goes. 7 o'clock, then he is hosting a dinner. I don't believe it's technically a state dinner.
No,
but it is a dinner. So we will have to see what happens. Sorry.
Here's a quick question on that, Sean, for you, since you used to work at the White House. So the pool is supposed to be called right as they're walking into this dinner at 7 o'clock. Do they actually let the pool in usually for these dinners, or do we just sort of talk to them as they walk in?
So normally what would happen, I mean, you'll see the arrival, and because they'll still do. So, I mean, the state dinner, of course, they're horrible, Dan. They got to be on the lawn. The people, they're wet. We have to do a tent, which is why we have a beautiful ballroom coming your way. But anyway, so they should see you on the way in, and then you should stay for opening remarks.
Okay. Interesting.
So the toast, you'll be on the far end, but
that'll be fun.
Yeah,
No, just make sure you keep drinking your coffee today, Rachel. You're gonna
it's gonna be a long day.
So, all right, before we jump in, as I'm looking at the White House, looking at those cranes, obviously we are about to get an amazing ballroom. But ladies and gentlemen, do not forget, it is not just about the ballroom. You got a landscape around it, right? Nothing is worse than when you see a big building and it's just like the concrete or the drywall up against dirt. Well, if the White House is listening, and we know people in there are, you should think about all of our friends at Fast Growing Trees. They are the largest and most trusted online nursery. Thousands of trees and plants, over 2 million happy customers. I'm sure they would love to have customer number one sitting behind Rachel to be happy with their work. They have all the plants that your yard, your home, your White House might need: fruit trees, privacy trees, flower trees, shrubs, house plants, which is what here in New York City in an apartment we would look for, all grown with care and guaranteed to arrive healthy. It's like your local nursery, but anywhere you live, with more plants than you'll find anywhere. They actually work. You put in where you live, it'll give you your climate zone. You don't want to buy cacti if you're the White House. They would not survive, not do very well. So know where you live, know your climate. But they're alive and thrive guarantee promises that your plants arrive happy and healthy. No green thumb required, just quality plants that you can count on. So go to fastgrowingtrees.com, use our code Huddle for up to 10% off. It's Huddle 10 is what you want to enter for 10% off. Again, go to fastgrowingtrees.com. All right. So now with that, let's jump in here. So first topic, last night, just a wild scene. The Israelis attacked the Iran's natural gas facility. The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump was briefed and personally approved it. That's not according to Donald Trump, because he then overnight made a point of going on X to say, we had nothing to do with this, and that Israel will no longer attack it, which was an interesting statement. But the Iranians responded. They went out and hit the UAE. They're threatening other countries. For those who don't know, right? What's that?
Wasn't it Qatar that they hit?
Okay. I thought it was the UAE, but either way, most of Europe's gas comes out of there. So the European markets are now freaking out. Yeah. This now has the potential. This has always been the fear that not only would the straits close, but people would start hitting, those oil production facilities are massive. It's hard to protect them. There's, lots of chemicals and obviously petroleum and other things there. And so today we wake up, oil, I think, is up $7 this morning. It's almost at 120. And there seems to be, at least, Sean, I'll go to you first. Trump seemed to kind of try to dial this back a little bit here to say, hey, one, if Iran, if you hit other countries, like, we will really go nuts on you. But two, like, hey, we're not going to keep doing this to you either. Sean, obviously this is, war is messy, but this seems to be something that everybody is a little nervous about if everyone starts going after people's energy production.
Yeah, that's why when he went after Karg Island, he was very specific that he only hit military targets and basically saying, hey, I'll let you survive economically. I'm not looking to maim you guys. I think the problem is that it escalates real quick. And so Iran starts looking at other targets as well. So they're trying to keep this contained, and that's the problem.
Sean, what do you make of the fact that, like, again, someone told the Wall Street Journal, I think our friends in Israel have pretty good contacts with the Journal, that Trump personally approved of this, not just aware, but signed off on it. And Trump coming out and saying, no, that's not true. Obviously, they hit, I forget where it was earlier, Israel in the war. The White House reportedly was not happy that Israel did this. The White House team, they're trying to make sure there's no disagreements that are becoming public. But that to me was the first time that I really saw Trump outright say to Israel, no, wrong.
Yeah, the way he came out in that Truth Social post was so strong that I do wonder if there's just a disconnect between we gave you a heads up or somehow it wasn't, but no one, I don't, or we took it that you didn't say no as tacit approval or something like that. But I normally, like, him coming out that strongly and that vocally. I mean, it wasn't just I didn't know about this, but here's what we'll do instead, and we've told them not to do. I mean, that sounded pretty. And there wasn't like the operation went bad, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was trying to say, hey, this thing went sideways. If you weren't in agreement with that from the beginning, then you wouldn't have said what he said. So I sort of believe that there's got to be some wires crossed on this one.
It could also be, and I feel like I've heard people in the administration complain about this before, but perhaps Israel gave some sort of heads up, but didn't articulate like what potential consequences could be. And I don't know, maybe things got lost in translation, but
that's what I mean. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think there's some, hey, we gave you a heads up and
right.
We didn't really tell you the whole story or.
Yeah, I mean, it feels right now that we are at this point where we're about to cross the Rubicon here because, the president is saying, okay, Israel, don't do this anymore. And if they stop doing this, then Iran will stop, hitting UAE and Qatar, et cetera. But like, he also had a warning in there that if Iran continues, they're going to go in there and they're going to blow everything up in terms of like the oil fields. And once that happens, I mean, the markets are already like totally spiraling. What's going to happen to the markets if we go that far? It just feels like once that happens, any thought that this is just going to be like a short, month or two, engagement just totally changes because all of a sudden, like, this is just going to be totally explode.
And let me ask you guys both this here because I imagine that this is going to come up today in the press briefing. There are more stories appearing about, and Congress is starting to openly discuss this now, that we are potentially getting ready to use ground troops to invade, to take these oil assets. That this is one of the things that they are talking about. If we can seize their oil production and gas production, then we truly cut off funding for the regime, and we have a bargaining chip to say, we'll give you this back if ... Sean, I mean, we've always said ground troops would become a different beast. There's obviously the 2,500 Marines coming in. The energy, we're all in agreement, this is a challenge. Sean, do you think the White House is truly getting ready to potentially, and do they need to kind of come out and condition the country a little bit more that we may be sending in ground troops to do this?
So first, let me connect the last question in this one, right? Part of the reason that you don't want to go after energy assets, and part of the reason that you're trying to protect or take over Iran's, is for the stability of the rest of the market, right? If you're blowing stuff up, to Rachel's point, you hit a whole gas facility in Iran. It's not just you stop that. You can't just rebuild that on Friday and have it back up running Monday. You're taking that thing out for probably years.
And it doesn't just hurt Iran. It hurts like a lot. It hurts the whole world, right?
So part of this is you talk about oil prices. One, you want to prevent that from happening because that's not just short-term damage. That's long-term oil price, and pipeline issues. Second, by taking over and controlling the Iranian assets, you're actually showing the world that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's stability on the rest, all this oil that we have, et cetera. I think that would be a smart move. Here's the one thing, again, where everyone's going to like it. It's one thing to shoot at a ship. There are countermeasures. There's a lot of stuff that we can do that's fairly effective. You put a lot of ground troops and you throw a bunch of drones in that fly low under the radar. You do some surface to air stuff. You plant some. I mean, like you take out 30 guys out of a battalion. I mean, that's then you've got an American PR crisis. Yeah. And that's the one thing that, like, again, when everyone talks about planning. You can plan for all the how to execute a mission, but all those asymmetric things that they do now are just not. It's not easy, and so I'm just telling you, the plan is going to be then what happens when some proxy goes in and tries to take out a bunch of U.S. service members. We're going to have a problem.
Just a quick follow up, Sean, on this. There was reporting overnight too that additional Marines, more troops heading over. Maybe it's going to be more than 2,500 that go in. Do you think the administration is more likely to send in those Marines and have those boots on the ground, or just blow up, Iran's oil fields if they end up retaliating. Because if you send in the boots, of course, there's like political blowback here, but then you preserve potentially that infrastructure. But again, political consequences here. Otherwise, just blow the whole thing up, and then maybe it drags out longer. I mean, what is the worst?
The problem is you blow stuff up, and as I said, you're not just sort of
a long time. Yeah,
it takes a long time, and and even if you controlled it at the end, then you've got to fix it all. And
so you think they do boots before they
well,
blow
and there are reports that the Arabs are getting angry with us. That hey, this is coming into our backyard and hitting our funding, our oil fields, our hotels. And the worst case for the White House is to have the Europeans angry at them because it's impacting their fuel issues. The Arabs angry with, like, you want friends, right? We want Saudi Arabia and everyone fully on board and cheerleading us, not getting, more and more angry, because that runs up, a couple different risks. I think it goes to our next conversation here too, because look, the administration has said, and Hex has said again today, that the goals are very clear: to degrade the Navy, degrade the Army, get rid of the rockets and the missiles, and prevent nuclear. Now it sounds like it's also to stabilize the oil industry, which obviously is going to hit a nerve. And it sounds like the bill is coming to Congress. Last night, Reuters, or it was the Washington Post, Jeff Stein said that reportedly the White House, the Pentagon, wants to ask for $200 billion. It's being reported we're spending about $2.5 billion a day. That's before the ground troops potentially, come on the scene here. And at the same time, Sean, you very smartly said this when Democrats, jumped up like hyenas when the war started, that you needed congressional authorization. You very, smartly pointed out, no, only when the kind of ground operate, like if there are boots on the ground, and it would trigger something. Sean, the Republicans are so far sticking by Trump, a little bit of criticism, but muted. $200 billion potentially. And if I play out 60 to 90 days, let's say the troops arrive in the next week or two, let's assume, and I know some people are trying to split hairs. If they go to the islands, it's not technically Iran, but that 60-day clock would take us into the summer, right? As the midterms are starting to amp up, if they played it out 60 days to the max. Sean, what is your thought here about keeping Congress on board? Primary season. We've talked about Cassidy. Now Cornyn is sitting out there, in a no-win situation. What is your thought here?
So a couple of things. One, just on the War Powers Act, the one little nugget that's important to understand is that it has never been the administration, and this is bipartisan going back decades now, the sort of dirty secret about the War Powers Act is it's never been sort of not the word approved, but there's never been agreement that it's constitutional among any administration. They have played along, but it's always been in the back pocket that you don't get to tell us this. We'll kind of quasi comply with the War Powers Act, but we're not doing it because of it. We're just doing it like it's this cute little game that Washington has had for decades. I say that because you're going to, I think, hear more and more voices that start to claim like we never needed to abide by this anyway. The second thing is, I think the detail is going to be interesting in the additional appropriation. Do they try to put some use of military force language in there? And then the third thing I would say is it's really smart for them to ask for the $200 billion. And I'll tell you why. I think that the price tag may seem steep, but if you're DOD in the administration, you don't want to have to ask twice or a third time. You want your number, and this is the way it goes. I read some of the stories, and people are like, what this signals is pure and simple. They put a number out there and said, we don't want to have to ask again. Here's how long this will take us. This will buy us this much time, and that's it, plain and simple. No one's projecting. No one's got a crystal ball. They're just being smart planners, which is we don't want to have to come beg the parents again for money in a month. So let's ask to get us enough runway to do this, at least until, and it also sends a strong signal that you don't have to, you can to the world and everyone else, hey, we're going to make this work.
It's also like, I mean, this is going to be a negotiation, right? So ask for more than you're going to get. They're definitely not going to get 200 billion, I don't think. But in terms of signaling, I mean, like, look, I know, Sean, you're saying like, ask for this much just in case, like if in case you need the money. But like a lot of people are taking that and saying, wow, that means this is going to go on for quite a bit longer. The other thing I'll say is like, this is where Congress can really flex. I mean, this president has done sort of whatever he wants in terms of foreign policy, and Congress, I mean, they have squawked saying that they have a role, some of them at least. And I think you're going to start to see some Republicans, especially if troops start getting involved, boots on the ground, people like Josh Hawley, who did not, go with Democrats on the War Powers Act, but who said as soon as we have boots on the ground, I might have something else to say. So Congress, they're gonna get to flex their leverage here because they hold the purse strings, and he's gonna need them for this money.
Sean, I also I saw one thing, I forget who it was, that said in a poll that if boots, do you support troops on the ground in Iran? And it was like Republicans are split 50-50.
Yeah.
Do you think so far the MAGA is holding together, right? 85-90% is with Trump. We've talked about the degree. Do you think at the White House and the comms operation and everywhere they are gaming out? How do we ensure that base, how do we message to the base that boots on the ground are necessary and needed and is totally America first here still?
I hope so. I mean, I hope that's part of the plan. I think this is where really the new dynamic, we talk about it in campaigns, but it's clearly going to be the case here, of not looking just towards traditional media. But the dissension, if you think about it, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we talk about Joe Kent in a minute, and these other issues, but it's not like they've got a big problem. You noted like on Fox News, that's not the big issue. The big issue is influencers, the sort of the podcaster types, the Meghan and the Tuckers. So if you're them, I would do a full out, get these guys on board, get them in, get them briefed. They've done this before on a series of issues. So I think part of it is thinking about who the right audience is and where meeting voters where they are.
Yeah. Well, I think, look, on the Democratic side, obviously, again, this is a political show. This stuff is, this is going to play into the party's hands because they are going to say, as was done to them on Ukraine, $200 billion to a war we started that they're going to say was not, necessary, is $200 billion. We don't have health care and we don't have child care. Like, they're going to play to that. And then the idea of ground troops, they are going to, press for this vote. And it will be very hard, I think, for Republicans to continue to say no and wave it away when it's likely if you go home on a recess or do a town hall, on a weekend or whatnot, it is likely going to be a topic. And that is
I've already heard these Democrats start to say like we shouldn't be. And I'm like, wait a second. So for what, 6 years, you guys had no problem writing blank checks to Ukraine, and now suddenly, like, you care about funding our military? I did find it rather rich.
Yeah. No, yes, you are right.
That should be like talking point number one in terms of the White House pressure campaign on Democrats, Sean. Yeah. Like, that should be it.
I don't think it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. They will.
You haven't cared about Doge. You haven't cared about Minnesota fraud. You've wanted to send a blank check to Ukraine, and suddenly now you care about money. Give me a break.
Yeah, it's role reversal Thursday here.
Yeah.
All right. So our next topic here is, and we can start with any of these, but I think the Washington Post had an interesting story about this kind of conversation that JD and Tulsi had with Joe Kent. Tried to get him to not go public. It sounds like Kent showed Vance his letter. He told him, hey, go talk to Susie, go talk to Trump, be respectful. But, he
so much for that.
Yeah, he knew about it. Sean, yesterday, I thought it was kind of interesting. He talked about Vance on the economy saying, hey, give us some time. We know people are hurting, kind of a little more of I feel your pain. On the war, he said, hey, there's going to be a little bit of pain on gas prices. Hey, we don't all
Rachel,
agree.
I think you just got to be careful of your mic right now.
Oh, sorry. Should I move? Can you guys hear the people behind me?
No, we just hear you.
It's just the mic. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
But Vance was kind of candid yesterday, and you don't hear this a lot from the administration. Yes, we have, disagreements, and hey, when the president makes a decision, we're all on board. But obviously some of us, like with the economy, Vance was pretty open yesterday. And then Tulsi's, statements yesterday where she kind of ducked a couple of these topics in terms of the imminent threat. Sean, how, that it's one team, but this is the closest we've come in 2.0 to the cracks starting to emerge a little bit here.
Yeah, the thing is, I think that, as I mentioned initially, I was very intrigued as to where the Joe Kent story was going. But yesterday, that guy got blown up.
Yeah,
there's comments of him on the Sean Ryan podcast, and I'm playing them tonight on my show, where he literally talks about the imminent threat that Iran poses. He is on there. He's talking about SEAL Team 5 going in and doing some stuff. It is like the guy is on tape talking about the threats that Iran poses and what it has done to our country and to our service members. That's number one. Number two, according to, I think it was either Axios or Semaphore this morning, he's been under FBI investigation for 3 months for leaking classified information. But, look, so I'm just like, this is one of those things where, again, I think initially everyone in Washington got excited like it was the anonymous letter. And then you start to have the crack and realize who this is, what his track record is, what he's been saying. So I'm not worried about that. I thought Tulsi actually handled herself very well. She's already back in the saddle today. They didn't lay a hand on her yesterday, and I thought that was fascinating.
I want to chime in a couple things. The first one is this notion of Kent being under criminal investigation that had predated him leaving the administration. I mean, I do find it kind of curious that he would be under federal criminal investigation for leaking classified information and still working in this administration. I mean, like, is that typical? Like, if somebody's under investigation for, like, I don't know, like that just was surprising to me. Number one. Number two, on Tulsi on the Hill, like, I am interested to hear that you thought she sort of performed well, because I'm curious what people in like close to the White House think, because she would not say that there was an imminent threat in Iran, right? She said it was up to the president to decide this. And okay, maybe you want to argue that's not her job, but like CIA director Ratcliffe, like, he was asked about this and he 100% was like, of course, imminent threat, 100%. So why is he the one saying that? And Tulsi's doing this little tap dance. So I'm just curious, like, are people really thrilled with that? Like, because it didn't seem like a ringing endorsement, frankly.
You know what? You bring up a good point, and I should amend my comments. I graded Tulsi on a curve, and I say that because, look, when she went into this hearing, there are all these previous comments that she had made about Iran and about Trump. And so I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a very difficult day for her. Like, how does she answer? How does she navigate this? My definition of success for Tulsi yesterday was to get out without a Kristi Noem moment.
I see.
So I think it's a fair point you're making, because I think Radcliffe obviously very much, on the team, like, it wasn't a surprise. I think I was grading Tulsi on a curve because I really was like, oh God, this is going to be very difficult for her. And I to be blunt, if Tulsi was still in Congress or out of Congress and asked about this, I don't think she personally believes this.
Clear.
This is not, but I think she understands that your job in an administration is to serve the principal.
Right.
And she did the best that she could, despite probably her personal beliefs.
Yeah. Can I also bring something else? I want to bring something else up regarding the vice president. In that Washington Post story that you referenced, Dan, there's this graph in there where people close to him say he's not sure yet if he's going to run. This was the first I had sort of heard that. Like, I don't know that I believe it, frankly, but apparently, like, they're having their fourth kid here in a couple of months, and the reporting indicated that he wanted to reassess. My sort of theory, just completely theory, is that maybe he wants to take the focus a little away from himself right now, given all the Vance stories. But like, I found that surprising. So I'm curious what you think about that, number one, Sean. But then the other thing that I thought was interesting yesterday was when he responded to Kent, or when he sort of referenced what Joe Kent did. He said, it's your job to serve the president. You can advise him how you want behind the scenes. And then, like, if he does it and you disagree, it's a good thing that you resign. But what you didn't hear him say was that this guy was a leaker, that this guy was a liar, like, or maybe he did and I missed it. But like, I don't know. I was sort of.
No, he didn't.
I didn't see that, so I thought that was interesting. But
yeah, it's a great
Go
flag,
ahead.
Rachel. No, I mean, look, it's a great flag because I again, and some of this is your tea leaf reading, right? And you can get carried away and
Right.
just get, chasing your tail a little bit. But it also is, I mean, to state the obvious, it is, I think, pretty apparent. Vance does not love this. It goes against his entire brand since he's been in politics. Tulsi doesn't love this. And yet they are having to march out there and defend it. And it does appear uncomfortable. And I just wonder behind you, Rachel, in that building, where they are so used to everybody fully on board, like Hegseth, right? Going before the cameras, and you are just attack, 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 attack. And both of those two, and Vance in particular, were more empathetic of disagreement, more empathetic of how difficult this is and the pain that Americans are going to feel the next few weeks. That's essentially what he said. Next couple of weeks are going to be bumpy. I just wonder if in there, Donald Trump sits there and thinks, okay, great, we have disagreements. Glad people know about it. No big deal. Or if Trump is fuming, that like, where is my team fully on board in a bumpy moment right now?
So two quick points on this. One, someone in the chat brought this up, and I think it's interesting. On any other day, it would have gotten a lot more attention. But Joe Kent's comments on Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Yeah.
I was shocked that it didn't get more, but considering everything else that's going in the news cycle, but it's, to me, I don't know. I sort of, I don't know. I just, to me, the whole idea of every time someone brings up Charlie to invoke some issue, anyway, I was a little taken back by his comments on that. I'll leave it at that. The second, just getting back to Rachel's comments on JD. One, I don't know that I find it that shocking. Anybody who's about to have their fourth kid, he's been very successful. He's very young. Maybe that, I mean, I don't know that it would be wild to think, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to do this. Politically, though, here's why I was intrigued by that, and I don't buy it. Even if you're having that conversation, even if you are, and he's probably having it with his wife, saying, do we want to do this? What do you think? Is this, like being first lady is a lot more public, and do we want to have a 1-year-old or what would it be, 3-year-old in the White House? Those are normal conversations that any parent has, regardless of the level of public service that you enter in. But I don't think that he'd be having that conversation outside of that. And I'll tell you why, because right now, the normal question I get, I was at a dinner last night. People go, so what is it going to be, JD versus Marco? And I was like, no. And the reason I say that is those stories don't help. If you're JD, like I said, you might be having those conversations very privately with your spouse or, whatever. But like, I just don't buy it. It wouldn't make political sense because it would make an opening for somebody else's, particularly the Rubio folks.
Right. That's a good point.
Well, we will see here. More to come. So the next topic here, or actually, wait, before we do that, Sean, you got something in the mail here.
Oh my gosh!
Oh yes.
Look, I showed you my order the other day.
This is an unboxing. Sean's officially an influencer now.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm going to do two things. I cheated, Dan. This is the first box, but you can see it's empty. This is the first layer pant. I was so excited when I got it last night. I was wanting to open the whole thing here, but I couldn't help it because this is the other one I got. I told you I couldn't decide. These are the bamboo knit pajamas. I'm telling you, they're the softest things I've ever felt. I am so excited. But the second layer ones, they're also, like I said, I couldn't decide, so I got both because I use our code Huddle at CozyEarth.com. These are the men's first layer pant. I wore those last night. Oh my goodness. Slept like a baby. That's if you're looking for something for summer and you get hot, I can't wait to try these tonight. But I'm telling you that this is the men's first layer pant. Trust me, it's a winner every day of the week. CozyEarth.com. Use our code Huddle and you will thank me for it. You're welcome.
All right. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Yeah, exactly. All right. All right. The next topic here. So Senator Mullin was testifying or sat for a hearing yesterday on his nomination to be DHS secretary. He had a lot of interesting things to say. I mean, he just, the fact that he was like, our goal is to not be in the news every day. He talked about not micromanaging, line item budget, not stuff over 100,000. He said basically he supports getting a warrant from a judge unless they're chasing somebody, into a building. But Sean, he really did set, I thought he did pretty well, all things considering, and really did try to set a new tone, which the administration clearly, wants to do here. What was
my takeaway though, Dan? I've never seen, that hearing started and it went to like DEFCON 1.
Rand Paul
sat there and they went at it in a way that I was like, oh boy, you guys need some like quiet time alone, because
for sure
I've never seen in 30 years a hearing start like that. We'll talk about it on my show tonight, because Rand Paul, it was like Festivus. Here's every grievance I have against you, Markwayne Mullin, and I'm going to give you a chance. And then he was like, you called me a liar. I've never seen anything like that.
It was like Real Housewives, except 2 Republican men in this cockfight. It was it was incredible. Yeah.
But then after the hearing, Paul goes out and does this, talks to the press and says he's got anger issues. He's got he doesn't seem like he's ready. I mean, this was personal. I got to be honest. I know that everyone's looking at Fetterman for his vote today, but I don't see how Rand Paul votes for the guy. And
he said he's not
gonna.
No, I know, but I mean, I know what he said.
Yeah.
But you better hope. This was a lot. I was shocked at the level of vitriol. Now, here's the big takeaway for me. If you're Markwayne Mullin, in all seriousness, you had to have known that was coming. And the idea, not the full on attack, right out of the gate, but I mean that there was some bitterness, and that they really, the idea that there wasn't a cleanup on aisle 5 in the last week where you got to go over and say, hey, Rand, we've had our differences. It's never been personal, whatever. But to wait to let it go to a hearing, I was like, what do you that should have been cleaned up well before then.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I need to amend something I said when he was first nominated, and that is that he's one of the nicest members of Congress. Let me clarify to the press. I was going to say, great with reporters, always quick to have a quote or explain something to reporters in the hall. But clearly he's got this beef with Senator Paul. I do think that there's a risk, obviously, for the chairman, for Chairman Paul here, because he has this axe to grind with Mullin, but he turned this into a very personal vendetta thing. I mean, it wasn't even about how you run DHS. They were fighting about whether or not it's a good thing that people were dueling 150 years ago. I mean, it was just
and the legality of it.
The legality of it, and who should have been beat up by whom, centuries ago. I don't know. It was the most bizarre thing. Clearly, Markwayne Mullin, this is why you have those one-on-one meetings, like you said, Sean, to sort of iron these things out before they go public. And what is a simple apology? Clearly he doesn't like the guy. He doesn't like that Rand Paul is usually a thorn in the side for the Republican Party. But Paul is still mad that he said that he, quote, understands why his neighbor beat him up. And the senator was like, I almost died, basically. I got an infection. I broke multiple ribs. And you said it's okay for this guy to beat me up. Just go in and apologize. It's not going to kill you.
Right. And the weave though was, hey, if you believe in this violence, then how can you lead DHS, which is supposed to address violence?
I guess.
Right? So it wasn't
but
you're going to go lead the department
thing.
of, you're going to be the leader of HUD.
It's so funny because I watched part of it, and my takeaway was, well, it wasn't nasty with the Democrats, therefore it was a great hearing. It's so fascinating that your takeaway is that the fact that, as you say, it's almost unprecedented that a senator attacks.
Well, no, but Dan, right?
It sucked up the headlines.
But think about this. I expected your side to go full spider monkey and be like, what reforms are you going to make? And it's Rand Paul out of the gate where when they turned over to ranking member Peters, I think he's like, I'll yield my time back to the chairman.
But in terms of the substance, though, that what you brought up, Dan, in terms of him saying that he would require judicial warrants to go in, that is different than the administration's position, at least before.
Oh, it's also dangerous. I mean,
I was gonna I wonder if he's going to have to amend those remarks. Maybe
Yeah, I'll tell you that to me, I'm against that. I mean, I'm against him, what he just said. That's just a horrible box to put DHS in.
Well, maybe there'll be some more red on red attacks in the days ahead then, and Democrats can sit back. All right, we now just the last topic here. Governor Hochul. So for those who haven't seen, she sat, I think it was with Politico at a New York State at a panel, and was talking about this Mamdani pushing. For those who don't know, New York City cannot raise taxes on its own. The state has to approve it. State legislature, the governor has to sign it. And Mamdani is trying to pressure Hochul. He has gone up to Albany. He has allies pressuring her. And she basically sat there and said, look, we are losing money as a state because rich people are leaving. And specifically talks about people going down to Palm Beach, and kind of jokingly says, I need to go down there and try to get them to come back. And I'm not going to raise taxes. And I think it's an interesting thing, because if Mamdani cannot get her to raise taxes, he is going to have to cut services, not expand services. And this is obviously, as Democrats look about, potentially winning the House back 2028, this idea of like, we can always raise them a little more. We can always raise them a little more. And here you have the governor of New York saying, in fact, no, we can't. Like, it is a huge problem in our state. The taxes are even where they are. So I find it fascinating, because I'll be curious what Schumer and Jeffries and AOC, if they get dragged into this, if this becomes kind of a little bit of a battle between Schumer and AOC here, or whether Mamdani kind of accepts reality that she does not appear to be willing to sign it, and they don't have the votes to override it.
Dan, can I ask you a question on that? Because so I didn't catch the full remarks on it. I just caught a clip of it. And you're saying this message was you took it as her addressing Mamdani, like, you're not going to get your tax increases.
Well,
when I saw it, I thought she was mostly addressing companies and complaining that they're all moving to Florida, and like telling these business leaders, go to Florida and tell your friends to come back. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, you're complaining because your economic policies drove businesses from the state. Like, that's rich. This is like not a charity. These are businesses. They have to do what's best for the bottom line. And if your policies aren't lining up with that, then they're out of here. So you took this as not as a message to the business community. This is a message to Mamdani that he needs to sort of,
it's both, right? It is this constant challenge, because every week there are more and more stories of financial firms, big and small, thinking of leaving the state, because it just, you can go to Miami now and it's like Wall Street South. I mean, you can go to Texas, and therefore the city is facing this conundrum, because as Mamdani, has admitted, his budget got shrunk by $3 billion here, or he got $3 billion extra dollars just based off Wall Street bonuses this year alone. That's not corporate income tax. That is individuals paying income tax on the bonuses that they're going to get this year. If you start to lose these firms and you start to lose more businesses, New York is going to be in a world of pain. And I think she recognizes it. So yes, she is partly saying to businesses, come back, but it is partly also, I think, to Mamdani, that we cannot just raise taxes a little bit more. We at worst, we got to hold them where they are.
If she shuts down Mamdani, though, does this repel the base from showing up for her in the fall?
This is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the thing that I think is, I think there's the politics of this that we're talking about now, like the internal New York thing. But it was funny. I was with a guy, a Navy fellow Navy officer last week, and he was talking about. He said, "Oh, I live in Tahoe, in Nevada," and he said, "That's where all the California billionaires are moving to." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "In order to avoid California taxes, they're all establishing residency in Tahoe because Gavin's doing the same thing out there." But this is, to me, there's this much broader indictment on Democratic tax policy, which is you guys raise a ton of taxes on people. The thing about rich people is they're smart. They have like attorneys and accountants who go, okay, here's the tax scheme that we will set up for you so you don't pay. It's middle-class Americans and poor people that get screwed the most on a lot of this stuff. But the rich people are going to figure out, estate planning and all that kind of stuff. But here they are. She's begging them to come back to New York, to Rachel, because of what you just said. She raised taxes, They all said, great, we're going to establish residency in Florida. We're not going to pay your tax. They suffer the consequence of it, and now they're screwed. But you can't treat people like that and expect that they just sit there and say, oh, sure, I'll go work harder and longer so that you can screw my, take more of my money. I just,
particularly as capital's mobile. It used to be, if you wanted to be in tech, you had to be in Silicon Valley. You want to be on Wall Street, you had to physically be on Wall Street. Now it's mobile. People can go anywhere, and of course that's a problem.
And these politicians are learning it. I've talked to 5 different friends who either live or have lived in the Northern Virginia area, and have said because of Abigail Spanberger, they are likely to move. And these policies, whether it's economic or what she's doing, a lot of what she's doing is economic, but she's also doing a massive gun grab here. And she, we have become much more mobile, where it's not that as consequential to say, fine, I'll just pick up and move. So it's amazing how this is happening. You look at the migration in America, it's going from blue states to red states. People don't want to be in California and Massachusetts anymore. They're moving to Florida. They're moving to Texas because they're like, I don't want to live like this anymore.
I'm waiting for reapportionment here in a few years.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to questions here. What do we have? All right, John CM. Why did 200 Dems in the House vote against bill to deport illegals who commit welfare fraud? Thoughts on New York spending over $80,000 per homeless person? Yeah, John, it's an interesting story. I did see that yesterday, that I believe the bill would, if an illegal immigrant commits fraud, it would be grounds for deportation. I did find that interesting that many Democrats voted against that. To me, I think that's just a tribal knee jerk. They just don't want to go there. But I mean, if you're here illegally and you commit a crime, whether it's fraud or something else, to me, it would be a no-brainer that the person should leave or be forced to leave. But I think, it's like we were talking about earlier about the war stuff. It just, people go to their respective corners. But I imagine you'll see that in a campaign ad.
Yeah, I was going to say that'll come back to bite them eventually.
And then the second thing, obviously, there's that report. I must have come out yesterday in the last couple of days, because I saw a lot of social media commentary on this. The idea that right now the current average homeless person is getting $80,000 in New York really, again, speaks to what we're doing, these issues. Gavin Newsom has run for office since he was 8 years old on a platform of eradicating homeless, first in San Francisco, then as lieutenant governor. And all the answer is to keep throwing money at the problem. And we see this in every major city. It's just, to me, it's a ridiculous notion that it's like education. You just keep throwing money. You look at the District of Columbia, they spend more per pupil than any other state, and yet they rank near the bottom. Part of it is you can't just keep throwing money. It's policy matters and culture matters. And if you just throw money and think that that's going to solve the problem, you're wrong.
All right, next questions. Robert Britchkow. Question: now that Russia has used the Iranian war as a pretext for ending peace negotiations with Ukraine, will this administration stop saying that Russia is acting in good faith? We only have 5 topics, so it's always hard to pick. But just the fact that Russia is now selling oil, we're kind of dialing back sanctions. This story about, how much they're helping in Iran. I don't know if Witkoff and Jared are now talking to the Ukrainians, where they are. I mean, that war is just so fascinating. I don't know.
I think the president's expressed his frustration with Putin in particular because of but I think, look, one of the points that I would make, I think the president just wants the Ukrainian Russia war off his plate more than anything else. That's what drives him, is I just want this done. And I don't get me whatever deal will make this go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was curious what you think. Like, is he going to get super angry about all these reports that they're sharing information, or at what point does he, like, I don't know.
He's commented on it. He has said that he's not happy about it. So
not happy about it versus, like, the anger of Trump are two different things, but I don't know. Curious.
Yeah, we will see. Good question, though. Something we'll keep watching. Next one. All right. Mark Solemn 1794. Question: have we run out of targets that are not oil gas fields or in tunnels under civilian areas. To win, will Iran have to look? I think he means look like Gaza. Yeah, a friend who happens to be very Iranian, a Jewish Iranian American who still has family there and is tracking this very closely, said Israel still has thousands of targets, and I don't think they're running out of targets. I think they're going to basically try to assassinate the regime out of power. I mean, they're just not going to stop. It's a great question. What happens, and do they ultimately have to flatten it?
Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. A lot of it you're going to have to pay to rebuild somehow, like they're dealing with Gaza. So I think they're trying to be a lot more strategic than they were there in terms of making sure that the targets are a lot more specific, and undermine not just their nuclear capabilities, but their ballistic military capabilities, their military industrial complex. They're trying to make sure that when Iran comes out of this, that there is at least a decade, maybe two, that they could possibly, before they can possibly constitute a threat again.
Yeah. Good question. All right. Kim, question. Do you think this meeting that Vance is having with oil executives today, I don't know if that is that today. All I saw was this week. So either today or tomorrow will help. They are touting that a big announcement is coming. Great question. I mean, for those who don't know, the American Petroleum Institute is holding a meeting this week with executives. They represent almost all the large and medium-sized oil producers. J.D. Vance and I believe Secretary Wright, the Energy Secretary, are both going to meet with their leaders. I don't know what announcement is coming. This is obviously a fast-moving story because, as Sean said, these attacks on these gas and oil facilities, it's going to take months to fix them. I mean, and we're talking about Venezuela and whether maybe companies are going to go in there. I know there are rumors that Exxon and others may be going back in, but I don't know. Sean, are you hearing anything coming out?
It'll be interesting. I mean, the only thing that I could see is some kind of laxing of regulation here.
Yeah, I can see that.
That would allow more production to come in, or would allow, I mean,
but that takes time, right? Doesn't that take time? That takes time.
It takes time. But again, a lot of this goes to signaling to the market. I mean, the market is very reactionary to the price of oil goes up because it doesn't think it's going to. So if you can ease some of the constraints about production or so I think that they're going to do a lot of stuff to potentially make it easier. But the thing that's sort of the tell in the question, Kim, is that Vance is having the meeting. And the reason I say that is if it was that big, Trump would be announcing it.
Great point.
Oh, that's so funny. I thought that's a good point, Sean, because I was like, oh, the vice president's involved. It must be something big. But you're like, if it was a huge.
Well, no, I don't think I think it's like it's big, but it's one of those things that like on a scale of
he wants credit.
10, if you want like if it's a 1 to 5 announcement, it goes to the, if it's 1 to 2, Secretary Wright does it. If it's a 2 to 5, 2 to 6, then the VP. Once it rises above a 7, that's a POTUS decision or announcement.
That's a good point.
Good call. All right, next one. All right, Libel 98. Question. There are reports Tulsi is on thin ice, if not already out the door. What's the likelihood of her still being there by July 4th? Great question. I think there's a poly market on this. Let's see here. All right, our latest,
I can't read it.
All right, latest from Poly Market. Kristi Noem, 64% people thought would leave before 2027. Obviously, that happened. Number 2, Tulsi Gabbard, 61, Kash Patel, 39. Total side note, if you're not following Miranda Devine in the New York Post, I find it fascinating. She is going after Kash Patel. She has her third story up today that he is not taking the threat to the homeland seriously. And she is read by the president. The New York Post is read by the president. She is a loyal follower of the president. I'm fascinated by that. But Sean, what do you think? Tulsi's still there by Libel says July 4th. Polly's looking at the end of the year. What do you think?
So, we asked this question a couple of days ago, maybe even a week ago. I will tell you, I think there's a reason that people have the money on her. If you had to look at, well, no, but I mean, if you look at the rest of the cabinet, like to be blunt, I see here Dan Scavino 38%, unless something's missing that I talked to Dan the other day. Like I don't get any, I mean, maybe he's going to go do Dancing with the Stars in the next season, but
Yeah.
I
He's
just
not
don't
going
see
anywhere.
it. Caroline obviously has no intention of leaving after I mean,
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
I would say of all the people, right? I'm not suggesting by any means Tulsi's on her way out, but I would say that if you had to look at the cabinet as a whole, I think that's probably the smart bet right now. Like, I get why people are putting their money there.
It's also a question of what does she want to do? I mean, like, it's not just the president. Like, people have said this to me in the administration before. Like, if she wants to run again and she wants, her anti-war sort of dovish tendencies to be a big part of that, like maybe at some point she feels uncomfortable and feels like she wants to leave
So
because she doesn't want to be associated with something on that,
Maybe
Go
it's
ahead.
some of the same people, Rachel, but a couple of people had this conversation with me last week and said, like,
Yeah.
I said, okay, let's just pull the thread on this. Run for what?
Yeah, that's what I was
run
thinking.
for president. I said, okay, in which party?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, when people say this stuff, sometimes I get why it's fun at a cocktail party or when people are like, what if the Electoral College ties and there's 4 Martians that have come down on the same day and take over, get elected Speaker of the House? It's cute discussion.
Listen,
walk me through the reality.
Sean, I'm not saying she has any path to a victory ever, but people run for president all the time who have no shot in HE double hockey sticks of ever winning. And she might want to raise her profile.
But here's my point, though. What party?
Yeah. No. Who knows? I don't know.
So it's not that I don't disagree that maybe she wants to run, but at some point someone says, hey, there's a ballot. Which name do you want? I mean, like, she has to go through that process. She can't run as a Democrat, and Republicans, I'm sorry, maybe it's a niche thing.
People have run. People with less gravitas have run. Let's just say that. But the other thing I want to say about
party they're in.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe she thinks she can do some sort of long shot. Anyway, who knows? But a couple of other things on Tulsi on this, like, because I was talking to somebody this week about this a little bit. Like, she apparently has bought a little goodwill with what happened in Georgia with the president in terms of going down on the election security stuff. Obviously, President Trump likes that. But like, it was a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, that I wrote this story about how angry he was at her for this like video she did warning about a nuclear world war, like right as he was making this decision about whether or not to bomb Iran, and it was clear like she was not in that camp and did not want him to do that. He did not like that video. But like, just generally when I talk to people in the administration, like, they're like, it seems like they sort of see her as like kind of out on an island right now, and they're wondering like maybe she'll leave on her own. But anyway, it's interesting. I would be surprised if Trump actually fired her, but it doesn't feel like she's the most loved senior member here on the team.
Well, we'll have to stay tuned. All right, it is a few minutes after 9:30. Also, just want to remind people, March Madness kicks off today. If you haven't, if you're going to do a bracket, you got about 2.5 hours here to fill one out. Just quickly, Poly Markets here. I think Duke is Michigan. Okay, Michigan over then Duke, Arizona, Florida, Houston, and Iowa State.
But that's a pretty tight thing, Dan.
Yeah, that is. It's wide open. Yeah, it's wide open this year. So we'll have to see. But always fun, always an exciting time if you like, like March Madness. Sean, what do you have coming up? You've teased the show a few times tonight.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, a lot to break down because I want to talk about this Mullin hearing and Rand going after him, and then the Huddle video. There's so much fun to talk about today. Chris Stegall, our buddy from Pennsylvania, the host up there. Patrice Onwuka, who fills in and carries Larry O'Connor's water every day on WMAL. And then Amber Duke will join us as well. So we got a great.
Oh, yeah, because Thursday it is the panel.
Panel.
Yeah. I've been slow. I've been up since 2:30. I couldn't sleep last night. Rachel, are you excited? Ready for your big day?
The question is, will it be a big day, right? Like, am I going to is he going to call in the press pool? Fingers crossed he does.
Well, by the way, just to give you guys
out here.
a little preview, I will be actually I will not do the show there tomorrow, but right after the show, so we're gonna flip roles tomorrow.
Okay.
Apparently, my invitation was lost in the mail, but I'm sure it's coming any day. Well, thank you all for joining today. Rachel will be back home tomorrow. Enjoy your Thursday, and we will see you tomorrow. Good luck today, Rachel.
Thank you.